everyone. For this Book Review Wednesday, I thought it would be interesting to discuss a franchise or collection of books that have been fairly inspiring over the years. Books in particular that I really enjoyed growing up as a child and enjoy even now to glance at least, and get enraptured in the story that it's trying to basically tell throughout the franchise. And that series is the Harry Potter books. The thing about Harry Potter and why I think it is so appealing to children in particular is because it is very fantasy oriented. It has a lot of imagination, a lot of creativity within its setting, with its characters, with its atmosphere. It knows how to create a good children's story. And I think that's why a lot of children in particular appeal to Harry Potter. Now, again, I'm not going to say that Harry Potter is the best series of books in the world, and I'm not going to say that it is the worst, because I don't think it is. I actually think overall the books are of good quality. And I was introduced to it actually by my grandmother, of all people, who read the books too. And she wasn't a kid, so again, this does seem to have a more general appeal, but I think for the most part, a lot of people like to say that they grew up with Harry Potter. So, again, it does appeal more towards kids, but there's other demographics in there too. The thing also that I think works effectively with the Harry Potter franchises is that you have a lot of different scenarios with the character relationships. You have friendships, you have romance, you have a villain, you have a mystery, you have an adventure. There's just a lot of different things that basically occur within the franchise that allow it to be interesting and engaging to people. Usually some books, even the classic ones, tend to focus more on one particular area, and they more go in depth into it, as opposed to Harry Potter, which does go in depth to a certain level, a ton of different things, and focuses on a lot of different concepts. So I think that's something else that's made the series fairly appealing over the years. Now let me discuss sort of some of the criticisms that have come from the franchise as a whole. Some of these criticisms, I think, stem from the main character, Harry Potter. I think a lot of people don't in particular find Harry Potter interesting. I would agree that I think he is the most boring out of the series, because again, he doesn't have a whole lot of personality compared to a lot of the other characters. And I do see the point there, but I think it was intentional, because I think the idea was, again, for the reader to insert themselves as Harry Potter, to see things through Harry's point of view, and hence seeing it from their point of view. They don't make the main character interesting in order for the reader, the audience, to insert themselves in Harry's place. That was really the main point, I think, of the franchise in particular. It was really trying to go for this technique. I think that's thoroughly emphasized too with the fact that, again, even though Harry grows as a character, he's not changed in regards to his personality. He pretty much stays the same throughout the series. It's just the stages that he goes through in life are fairly different. So you do kind of see the impacts. So I think that's something very important to note, and I think why some people sort of get a little bit critical of the series. And I will understand that, yeah, it would be nice if we had a character that was maybe a little bit more fleshed out, had a little bit more of a personality, but I think that was more intentional rather than being, rather than for the sake of being uncreative or uninspiring. So what's another thing that people seem to draw criticism from? I think one of the bits that I think a lot of people seem to get kind of rallied up on is that, again, there's not a huge amount of dimension to both sides. We really are dealing with more of a good versus evil battle here. We're not dealing with I guess we're not really dealing with a somewhat sympathetic villain. Voldemort in particular is, when you get down to it, not really a very sympathetic villain, or someone that I think can really, I think there is maybe some identifiability in there, and I think J.K. Rowling does emphasize this aspect, especially with him, kind of coping with death, and him not being able to handle that inevitability. I think that's something we can all identify with, and that really scares us. And it seems like that she was trying to put in that aspect maybe a little bit. It might have been, I don't think, as fleshed out maybe, but it seems like that there was that aspect. But beyond that, Voldemort, the things that he does in order to, try to revive himself, and to take other people's lives for the sake of his own is just so unbelievably selfish that it results in, I think, the audience really, really despising the character, rather than being more interested in the character, and to his point of view. And I'd be lying if I'd say that this isn't true, but I think, again, for intensive purposes, for the fact that this is a more children's-oriented story, the fact that even these kinds of complexities that it puts in are pretty deep for kids to really absorb and understand. Those kinds of concepts. Those things, even though they're not maybe as fully fleshed out as maybe an adult would like, from a mind of a child, it's very engaging. It's very interesting, even if the villain is a little bit not as fleshed out or given maybe more dimensions than maybe an adult novel would do. So I think for the sake of the audience, it's good. So I don't really think that real criticism is all that valid. I can understand a little bit more from the Harry Potter character angle criticism that I mentioned earlier, because again, Harry is supposed to be the main character. We have to try to get behind him, and I can understand if that's difficult for some readers, because again, Harry's not really all that interesting. He's not really designed to be interesting, but again, I think this all depends upon, the reader's preference. And personally, I don't mind if there's a main character that's uninteresting. If you've got 100 bajillion other characters that are interesting, and I'm just going along with the flow and going on this journey with these characters, even if the main character's not all that engaging, I'm totally cool with it. Doesn't matter to me. Just as long as there's engaging characters there. I don't care if the main character is a little bit of a snore. That doesn't bother me. But there's a third thing that I think people like to hype under, and that is the ending of the franchise. Whether in book or movie form, it does pretty much end in a similar way. You know, it has a case closed sort of ending. You know, good triumphs, and you know that's the end. You know, Harry, you know, claims to have peace. You know, now because he was able to bring about that peace within himself as a result of committing the acts that he does in the book, which you will see within the books, which you will see. Some people don't like this because they like the idea of a character, being, tortured a little bit in the aftermath because they think that's somewhat a little bit more realistic. And I'm not lying to say that doesn't have some sort of truth to it. And I'm not saying that, there couldn't be a possibility that maybe Harry does have moments where he comes back, and he feels something. It's just not really fully addressed. If anything, at the end, it just kind of just says, life's good. The thing about that doesn't really bother me is because I think different characters handle different things or handle similar scenarios in different ways. The nostalgia chick mentioned this a while back, why she liked The Lord of the Rings a little bit better, because, when Frodo comes back from his very horrible and life-changing experience, he's never the same. He's constantly tortured by it. It affects him so heavily that he just can't, function within society anymore. And that's why you see him go away at the end of the movie. And I believe at the end of the book, too. But with Harry Potter, it's trying to create a different ending. It's not trying to create the ending that Lord of the Rings offered. What it's trying to do is it's trying to create an ending where the character finds peace, where the character finds an answer to his problems, where the character ultimately resolves a major conflict that was trying to destroy them. That's really the feeling that it was trying to give. That satisfaction of knowing that this problem that I had, this thing that tried to ruin my life, is gone. I mean, can't imagine that weight being lifted off of your shoulders. I don't have to, deal with this anymore. I have peace. That's the image that it was trying to create. The sense of closure. Some people say that there's no such thing as closure. That there's always going to be bits of where, this won't impact your life any, that it'll always impact you. But I think that's not what the Harry Potter series was really saying. I think what it was really saying was that with this kind of struggle, there is always a sense of peace and accomplishment once that struggle is over. There's always a release. It doesn't mean that there's closure, but it means that there is a level of of happiness, an appreciation for life. And it seems like really that's where you could say too that there's flaws with both sides of the spectrum. There is this flaw with Frodo, seeing the world differently and being so tortured by it. He lets the experience destroy him rather than lift him up like it did with Harry. So I think there's flaws to both sides. There's flaws to taking the I'm going to let this affect my entire life, road, and then there is this negative end on thinking, yeah, everything's okay, everything's good, nothing's gonna happen bad to me anymore. I understand that both sides have flaws, but I think they have both good aspects to them. And I think even if the ending might be a little bit too childish for some people, and it might appeal to, again, children more than to adults, I think it still has a pretty adult ending, regardless of what these people say in regards to Harry Potter as a series. Now, those are really the three criticisms, I think, the biggest. Harry's character, the villain, and then the ending. To the entire saga, basically. But in regards to not only the positive moments, but to the very impacting moments that this series had, because again, I consider these books to really be classics among children's literature. Again, not adult literature, because this is not a series for adults. Can't re-emphasize that enough. But adults can like it. Again, my grandmother loves these books. She's seen all the movies. She cried at the end. Again, the story impacted her really deeply. And it impacted me too. I mean, it didn't make me cry, but it still impacted me. And what I will say is that I think it's held an impact because I think it was actually the first series of books for kids that got children invested in reading. Some people might be saying that no, it was Twilight that did that. No. I think that title belongs to Harry Potter because it was very popular when it came out. I remember tons of people lining up to buy the books. I remember all of the craze behind it. And is it perfect? No, absolutely not. And yeah, I'm sure there's flaws within the writing if I were to read them again. But as a whole, in regards to the story, I find the story to be very fascinating. Now, I also should say that there's also these various theories coming out, like that how somehow Hogwarts is supposed to be like an insane asylum or whatever. And I'm not gonna say that the plots of these books are perfect and explain everything. No, and again, they're kids' books. They're fantasy. Kids like fantasy. I don't know why people can't understand this. They like a little bit of nonsensicalness and nautical nonsense. Some things don't need to make sense. And it's okay if certain things don't make sense to kids. Kids will learn. They'll grow up and they'll understand what's real and what's not. Showing them fantasy doesn't distort their view of reality because it gives them a broader perspective and actually has them be able to distinguish the two. So, again, I don't think that it's trying to have some hidden agenda or, I think there was also these people saying like, oh, it promotes witchcraft or whatever. No, I don't think it promotes anything like that. Like, especially if there's like good witches and bad witches, it's creating a totally different world than really anything that involves, witches and wizards and things like that. And maybe J.K.R. Rowling, I'm not gonna lie, she probably did use some kind of folklore thing in there, but to say that it's going to damage your kids for life because it's got witches and wizards in it, even though we let kids dress up like wizards and witches for Halloween, question mark. And I don't know if even even if parents who don't like Halloween wouldn't let them read these books. But again, I don't think that's the book's intention. I think really the main intention of this book is to focus on the importance of life and what life holds for people. And I think all these things that it tries to encompass with friendship and love and, bonding, with adults again, Harry sort of bonding and having a father, figure like Dumbledore, those kinds of relationships, I think are very identifiable for a lot of people. And they've probably gone through these kinds of relationships. And again, it's sort of similar to, and this can be expanded to, negative relationships, like the really impactful relationship between Harry and Snape that occurs throughout the book. It's really not a positive relationship at all. They really dislike each other, but you do see through their perspectives as the books go on. So there is this, I think, incorporation of these various things, and it does try to put in a lot of themes that I think could be useful for kids. And I'm not saying that it's perfect, and I'm not saying that it doesn't have flaws. But what I'm saying is what I think it offers is overall something good, something inspirational, something I think worth value to children. And I know there's probably going to be people out there who say, no, you're wrong, and you're spreading devil worship because you like Harry Potter. And I'm sorry, but I don't worship the devil. I don't believe that there's a devil, really. So I'm really not trying to spread that at all. And I don't even think the books were even intending to do that. But if you think that they were, okay. But I honestly don't find any issues with them. It's like saying again that Disney films, because they use magic, that somehow means that they're evil and that they're spreading, magic or pagan folklore or something like that, And even if they did incorporate some paganistic things in there, it doesn't mean that it's evil or that it was even the focus of the story, which really is not. The world that J.K.R. Rowling really creates is just a world of of fantasy, of not reality. It's a completely different world, and as a result, we get these sort of different rules. And yes, maybe you have some things incorporated there that maybe aren't. That aren't necessarily maybe like our world, but it doesn't mean that there's not certain things within this world that we can't identify with. Again, it's not about the majesty of the world. It's about the values and sort of philosophy within the world that matters. And again, I do understand that there is this flaw of, Hogwarts really not having really a safe system of schooling. And I understand that there is a lot of issues pertaining to that, and you can make up little plot holes as we go along. But at the end of the day, I think really what the story has to offer in a nutshell is something that's, I think, good for kids. If you think it's bad for kids, that's your opinion, but that's not my opinion. But that doesn't mean your opinion is wrong. It just means that I don't think the same way you do about this book series. But I think that's really all I can say about the book series as a whole. This was sort of supposed to be a kind of an explanation of my understanding of the Harry Potter franchise and what I think about it. In case you are the maybe 1% that doesn't know what Harry Potter is about, ultimately it's about this boy who discovers, again, there is sort of these little cliche things that you could say, yeah, those are cliches, but certain people use them, it's bound to happen within a kid's book. But basically, Harry is a child who ends up tragically losing his parents because this villain, Lord Voldemort, ends up killing them. And for reasons that you will understand later on as the series goes on. And as a result of his parents being killed, he actually ends up surviving because his mom sort of protects him. And as a result, he has this scar on his face. And this scar is supposedly the mark that everybody knows him by. And he's quasi the boy who lived. And his parents were really from a wizarding world, a different world where wizards and witches exist, and there's flying and magic and all that good stuff, and Hogwarts, which is a school that all the kids go to. And Harry actually lives in the real world, but then discovers this fantasy world by various characters, and hence he gets to figure out sort of more of who he is, and again, it's all sort of like a growth story, but again, it's a growth story with a limited amount of character personality, because again, we're supposed to really be Harry going on this journey, not we're going on this journey with Harry. At least that's how I feel when I read the books. So that's really the entire series in a nutshell. Just a series of adventures with him going into this wizarding world, being at the school Hogwarts, those are the things that encompass the entire series pretty much. But ultimately, though, I think that's really all I can say. However, if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Again, I understand the series isn't perfect, and it does have a lot of flaws here and there. But I think at the end of the day, what it is offering is, I think, interesting and something that I think can inspire children as well as adults. But again, it is at a more children reading level. It's not as complex as an adult book, but it does offer some interesting groundworks when it comes to reading and for kids to comprehend various things. So I think it's definitely worth considering if you don't mind having there being a little bit of witchcraft here and there that I think is just complete fantasy and is nothing to do with anything within reality's existence. And if it did, it's still fiction, because again, it's just a bunch of folklore. So, I think that's all really I can say. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them. But I hope you all have a great day, week, month, and year, and thank you so much for watching. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.